Like, love a good conspiracy theory.
Oh, totally. Me too.
We grew up thinking that Marilyn Manson took a rib out.
How did we all know that?
I'm now on cloud seeding TikTok.
Whoa, wait a minute, back up.
I believe it.
Okay, step away from the internet because you're following the flat earthers. Let's talk about it. So cloud seeding is a real thing where we're trying to get a storm or a cloud to precipitate more out of it by doing something to either provide more condensation nuclei for water vapor to condense on or cause smaller drops to become bigger drops and precipitate out. It's a real thing. It happens. I'm going to tell you all the details you need to know about it, but it is given way too much credit, like way too much credit. And it ties into an even better conspiracy theory. People have been experimenting with cloud seeding since 1947, and if you read Chapter 7 in A Furious Sky, it's got a phenomenal story about it. Long story short, in 1947, a guy that won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1932 was brought on by the US military to see if they dropped a bunch of dry ice into a hurricane, if it would cause it to weaken or go away. In fact, the storm made a very sharp turn, ended up making landfall as a stronger storm and killed someone in Savannah, and that's the first time someone ever blamed cloud seeding on bad weather. Looking back at the data, this wasn't a time where they had radar and satellite. The storm was actually starting to shift before they did that. It took the path it was going to take anyway, but it ended up getting the blame. One of the most important parts of the scientific process is having a control, is like having two of the same things where you change something in one and not the other so you can see the difference. And we can't do that with weather and hurricanes, so they decided to pull the plug. A similar program picked up in 1962 and went on to 1983 and was found to be inconclusive. It made no difference. Now, I'm a huge aviation buff as well. You kind of have to be if you're going to be involved in meteorology. And I remember my dad growing up telling me stories about how they would fly over like runways that were completely fogged in. You could dump dry ice over them to help clear out the fog. Not cloud seeding per se. That's almost kind of the opposite, where we're trying to get the clouds to go away so you can open up these airports. I digress. There's still some experimentation that's being done with it in some locations from time to time. Where they're doing the most experimentation with it right now is out in like the Middle East. Dry desert places need more rain. But if you look at the data, we're looking at the Journal of Applied Meteorology and Climatology. It was published in 2003. And if we scroll down and take a look, all their data, the result was a disappointing 1.8% increase. Out of 4 cloud seeding experiments, they got an increase of precipitation of 1.8%. To put that into perspective, if the storm was going to put out 1 inch of rain, after what they did, it put out 1.018 inches of rain instead. Not even a noticeable difference. There are some occasional research projects that happen in the US to try to precipitate more rain over crops or on western, like facing mountain slopes in order to increase more snow for ski season. When you compile all that data together, cloud seeding is shown to provide a zero, negligible to at best 10% increase in precipitation. Even if it were 10%, let's put that into perspective. If a storm was supposed to put out 1 inch of rain, it would instead put out 1.1 inches of rain. What has a much larger effect on our weather is our large-scale weather patterns and our terrain. We just had an event in my town where I was able to show you guys through orographic lift, through a rain cloud going over a mountain at just the right place at just the right time, was able to increase the amount of precipitation because it cools as it goes up in the atmosphere by 20%. And that was a small mountain. What's happening right now in New England with this persistent, constant rainy weather is that we have the jet stream basically passing right over New England, and that's not uncommon. On the top of Mount Washington, we'd show everyone this map showing that no matter where weather originates in the United States, it all exits over New England, and that's because of the jet stream. And there is research being done behind looking at kind of long-term patterns and trends that we see in weather. There's a company out there, I think it's called like Weather 2020, that proclaims to be able to forecast months in advance because they recognize these patterns and how things are very cyclic. And they think, I'm not saying whether they do or don't, I'm not getting into this. They think they can actually forecast precipitation on specific days, months in advance because of these global cycles. And I do think there's something to that. I can't tell you how many times when I lived like out west in Colorado, like we'd get a foot of snow every Thursday in a specific month. Or right now in New England, it rains every Saturday. It's real easy to jump to a conspiracy theory when there's things going on that are beyond our understanding. And when I was just in Mississippi and I was chatting with Jim Cantori of all people and I was showing him the weather story and the hurricane story books, he honest to God asked me if I would do my next one on clouds and on contrails because of how out of control like the chemtrail and cloud seeding discussions have gotten. In April of 2024, Dubai received about 2 years worth of rain in a day. It was falsely put out there and reported that it was due to cloud seeding, and that message spread like wildfire. As soon as the meteorological organizations over there and over here and everyone caught wind of it, it was like, it's not possible. And the proof behind that is that it was actually a very well forecast event. You could see it coming, you could see it happening, and they were forecast to get this record rain days in advance. But misinformation seems to spread basically just as fast as the real thing sometimes, even faster. Mistakes like that perpetuate a false narrative. And here's where the cool conspiracy theory really comes in. Over half of the comments I get on my videos that talk about cloud seeding and chemtrails and all this other kind of stuff are from bots. You see, there are people in this world that just want to stir the pot, and there's other locations around the world that want to see our scientific integrity drop. And I think it's a real shame that there are certain parts of this country, there are certain people in our country, there are certain political parties that are falling victim to believing a very, very false narrative that is put out for the sake of causing trouble. I know it's a cool story and it can be an interesting one sometimes, and it would be great to have something to blame all this weather and this constant nonstop rain on. But unfortunately, the truth is much simpler than that.